Hello, I'm Tamsin. And last Thanksgiving, my sister found out I had $18 million. That was the moment everything snapped. My parents didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't even pretend to care where the money came from. They just leaned across the table and demanded I buy my sister a house. When I said no, they called me selfish, said I owed the family. But what they didn't know was how long I'd been preparing for this. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a scene. I just stood up and walked out. My sister screamed behind me, and I haven't looked back since. But you want to know what really broke me? It wasn't the money. It was the moment I realized I was never their daughter, just their bank account. So tell me, what would you have done? I pull into the driveway of my childhood home in Round Rock just as the late afternoon sun begins its slow fade behind the live oak trees. The light and shadow play across the long brick path, and I sit for a moment, engine off, letting the warmth of Texas air drift through the open windows. I hadn't been back here for Thanksgiving in 3 years, not truly. 3 years since I pretended everything was fine. My heart buzzes with familiarity and heaviness both, like a distant melody I thought I'd forgotten, but that returns no matter what I do. I smooth my blouse, take a deep breath, then step out onto the driveway. The board underfoot, weathered brick soft with moss in places, is exactly as I remember. I carry my leather portfolio in one hand. I always carry essentials. I knock 3 times, and then again, before pushing open the front door. Inside, the living room is polished. It glistens, really. The wood floors gleam under the glow of candlelight. Fresh pumpkin garlands drape along the mantel, and delicate leaves of orange and gold mingle against deep green vines. I can smell the spiced sugar sweetness of candles, the richness of pine, the crispness of autumn everywhere I turn. It's styled like some curated exhibit, every pillow fluffed just so, rugs aligned, frames symmetrical. It's gorgeous, but it also squeezes me in the chest, reminding me that perfection is always a performance here. Tam! Mom's voice calls from behind me before I've even set foot in the foyer. Marlise is there. Wide smile, arms spread. Her cheeks are flushed, and she smells like cinnamon and something else I can't quite place. Warm vanilla, maybe, or melted butter. She steps forward, enfolds me in a hug that's both tight and soft, motherly in the way memories are. Comforting, familiar, weighted. I rest my cheek against her shoulder. Inhale that scent. You made it, she whispers. I answer, I missed being here. She nods, but I know she didn't quite hear. She rarely listens that closely. Bryn glides in behind her, flashing designer boots, jacket that sparkles under the chandelier light, phone in one hand, energy in every step. Bryn, the sister people brag about. Always seen, always heard. I pull my coat off one arm, set the portfolio gently down by the door. I look up. It's 4:47. Dinner's at 6. I have time. Mom sweeps me into the kitchen. Appetizers are laid out. Olives, artisanal breads, herbed goat cheese, spiced pecans, honeycomb bits. I arranged them carefully this morning, traveling across town just to make sure they'd be fresh. Mom hovers, hands reaching, eyes soft. Need help? She offers. I shake my head. I've got it. She smiles that tight smile she does when she's proud, but also trying not to expect too much. In the living room again, cousins drift in, laughing in low voices, bumping elbows, comparing outfits, talking about fall break, internships, Bryn's latest influencer gig in Santa Fe. She's showing her phone, swiping through filtered photos, captions about finding myself in the high desert, dips of orange sky, turquoise windows, glowing sunsets. Someone laughs, one of the cousins, and I force a chuckle. Their laughter echoes, but empty, like clinking glass in a church when you're not sure what hymn they're singing. I trace the velvet on the back of a sofa, deep blue, lush, the color I painted my dorm room walls with in college. That color used to feel like me. Now it feels too loud, nestled among the perfect pillows. Uncle Reggie comes over, clearing a small plate. Still designing? Building houses? He asks, and I nod. That's good work. His smile is polite. I hear good as adequate. Never flashy, never enough to compete, but steady, reliable, my kind of integrity. Mom brings out the wine. She pours my glass, a dark Cabernet, pours Bryn's too, leaves Dad's bottle nearby. Bryn raises her glass, her eyes shining. Dad sips, slow, small, and I study how his hand shakes just slightly, how his eyes dart to catch hers. There's tension in every silent space, in the way the candles flicker, in the almost visible sighs between us. I excuse myself, head to the kitchen for water. By the back window, dusk is settling. The sky softens, pink, purple, then a deeper blue. I catch my reflection in the glass, tired eyes, shoulders drawn inward. I lift the glass, swallow a long drink of cold water. I wonder when I stopped feeling seen here. A sharp sound behind me. A cupboard swings open. Bryn, rummaging for wine, her fingers brush something leaning against the inside of the cabinet door, the edge of my leather portfolio. She pulls it forward. My heart skips. She flips it open. My blood runs cold, ribs tightening. A document, graph, figures. Bold print, investment account. Recent matured funds, numbered $18,976,000. Time slows. She freezes, brow furrowing. Sweat or maybe something else beads at her temple. The cupboard door slams shut. Wood hits wood so loud I feel it in my chest. I set down the water glass. The rim trembles. Bryn stares at the paper. Everything drains. Color, light, noise. Mom and Dad appear behind Bryn. Voices stopped mid-sentence. The music fades. Conversations stutter. Candles flicker. I stay where I am, water glass slipping just an inch from my fingers. Bryn's eyes blaze with hurt, disbelief, something bitter. "What's this?" she demands. Her voice cracks, shaking under the weight of the number she's seen. My stomach twists into knots. I know words are forming, but I already know what I'll say. I've practiced this moment in my mind more times than I want to admit. It wasn't supposed to be part of the dinner show, I say quietly. My voice is steadier than I feel, though my hands are shaking just a little. Silence blooms. A fork falls somewhere behind me. Silverware glints in the candlelight. A cousin's jaw drops. The grand flower centerpiece, too large, too perfect, seems suddenly ridiculous in its extravagance. My mother leans forward, eyes sharp. "Is this true?" she asks, voice low but loud enough. The question hangs, heavy, horrible, expected, but still cutting. Bryn steps forward. She's been hiding it. No surprise visits. Always busy. She thinks she's above us. Each word punctures air. My heart sinks. I remain seated. I meet Mom's eyes. I let all the years she never asked, the conversations she never initiated, the silences between us, they speak now. And then the worst comes, what she says next. A whisper that echoes louder than any scream. It cuts deeper than the revelation of money ever could. A betrayal, maybe. A confession. I look at her, mouth open, blood rushing in my ears, and I realize some things don't need to be said. They're already written in every look, every omission, every unasked question. The words still lingered in the air, thick like smoke after a kitchen fire. My mother's stare held me in place, unblinking, unreadable. But it was Bryn's sob that finally broke the silence. Bryn clutched the paper in trembling hands. The pages, creased now, bore the sharp folds of her grip. She stepped forward, voice unsteady. "How could you hide something like this from us?" Marlis's voice was cold, but underneath it pulsed something else. Wounded pride, confusion, betrayal. Her eyes swept me, searching for someone she thought she knew, someone different. I blinked. Once, then again, shame or anger, maybe both, tugged at me. I'd worked for that number. Every long weekend job, every empty apartment I shared, every sleepless night in grad school. That account wasn't a secret, just never something I believed I owed an explanation for. Dad sat rigidly at the end of the table, hands folded. His plate lay before him, untouched, mashed potatoes congealing along its rim. He stared at me, not directly, but like he couldn't decide whether he felt disappointed or stunned. "I'm drowning in mortgage debt," Bryn choked out, tears streaking her cheeks, smudging mascara black lines down her face. And you're sitting on millions like it's some cruel joke? She laughed, a short, bitter sound, the kind that fractures the lips. Wow. I opened my mouth to respond, then shut it again. The room held its breath. Everyone waited, eyes wide, senses taut. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, level, quieter than I felt. It's not your debt. It's not your money. And it's not a secret. It's mine. Marlis's jaw set hard. We gave you everything, sacrificed, nurtured, and you repay us with silence? You gave me a roof, food, guidance, yes, like any parents do. My voice cracked just enough to show I wasn't pretending I didn't care. But no one built this fortune for me. Not late nights drafting designs. Not the years I spent living in rundown apartments. Not the burn of uncertainty when clients delayed payment. Not once did you walk that path. Craig, Dad, finally looked up. His eyes were tired, conflicted. But we're family, Tamsin. Doesn't that mean something? He asked, voice soft, almost pleading. I leaned forward, palms flat on the table's surface. The wood felt cold through the thin veneer of polished gloss. It does mean something, which is why I never said no when you asked for help. But this time, this need to expose me, this show, it isn't help. It's performance. It's guilt dressed as confrontation. Bryn's shoulders slumped. She sank down into a chair like a queen dethroned. You know what would fix this mess, she said, trying to steady herself. Help me buy a house, just a small one. You'd hardly notice it coming from you. The room hummed with tension so thick I imagined I could taste it. I stared at her. I counted the seconds before the words came. What about when property taxes show up next year? When the roof leaks or the pipes freeze or the kitchen cabinets rot? Do you call me again expecting I'll bail you out? Because you've never managed money well, not steadily, not safely. Marlis's wineglass shattered into my line of sight. She set it down too hard. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth, blossoming in dark rings. Don't twist this. She's your sister. You owe your family. That kind of money? It belongs here. With us. I shook my head. My voice sharpened. That kind of logic? That's for legal debates, not love. I don't need my effort divided. I don't need my sweat stolen by expectation. The life I've built with my own hands, those risks, those losses, those are mine, not a family portfolio. Bryn stood abruptly, chair scraping back, eyes burning. You've always been like this. Cold, distant, acting like you're better than us because you read books and use fancy words like sacrifice. A cousin to my left whispered under her breath, She thinks she's too good for the rest of us. Then another muttered, loud enough, Money changes people, huh? Voices rose, each comment a flick of flame against secrecy, each memory a dagger of me skipping holidays, me ignoring family calls, me slipping out of sight. Aunt Mel brought up the baby shower I missed years ago. Another voice said I hadn't come home last Christmas. You think we didn't notice? Bryn demanded, eyes flashing. You pulled away before the money even became real. That part was true, but not as they meant it. My chest tightened. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady the hammering in my ribs. The wine stains spread under Mother's glass. The silverware glinted. Candles flickered back to life as the storm of accusation passed through their light. You think I owe you comfort just because I bleed quietly? I said, voice low. You think I should write checks to soothe your wounded pride? I paused, letting each word sit in the hush that followed. I'm not a charity to mend what you broke with silence. Marlis shook her head, mouth pressed in lines. We're your family. We have a right. I owe myself peace, I interrupted, rising. My voice was calm now, final, chair legs scratched wood as I stand. Mom's eyes glistened. Bryn's face twisted, hurt, outrage, something raw. Dad's arms dropped to his sides. A cousin gasped. I owe myself peace, I repeated, gathering my bag. I felt the warm glow of the chandelier above me, but it didn't reach me anymore. I stepped toward the hallway, steps firm. That's the only debt I recognize. Bryn's voice cut through. "You're a monster," she spat. "This is what they warn people about. Money changes people, and you think being remote makes you strong, but it only makes you easy to forget." I stopped at the threshold. The hallway light cast long shadows behind me. I didn't turn to look at any of them. I didn't answer. Outside, the door groaned as I pushed it open. The heat of the house exchanged for cold air slapping my face. I stepped onto the porch, wineglass still grasped, forgotten. The sky above Round Rock was vast, darkening, sprinkled with early stars. I let all that openness press against me, filling empty spaces in my chest. Footsteps thudded behind me, shouts, maybe something I couldn't catch. But I closed the door softly, letting it latch. The slamming echo wasn't only wood on frame. It was everything I'd buried, every expectation, every comparison, every moment of hiding, cracking open. I stood there a moment, hand on doorknob, heart pounding. The cool night air smelled like possibility. The stars flickered overhead, distant but real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't pretending anymore. The porch boards pressed cold against the backs of my legs, though the night itself carried an odd warmth, like summer had overstayed its welcome. I leaned against the railing, my fingertips tracing splinters worn smooth from years of storms. The silence after a fight has a texture. It isn't peace, it's a hush filled with echoes. My chest felt tight, the kind of tightness you get after holding your breath too long, waiting for the world to stop spinning. But silence never really lasts long in this house, not when pride has been dented. Behind me, the screen door creaked on its rusty hinge. The sound traveled across the porch like a warning. Through the window pane, Mom's voice floated out, soft but unsteady. "Tamsin, wait." I didn't turn. I didn't even flinch. My eyes stayed on the yard, where shadows clung to the grass in uneven patches. The light from inside fell away as she retreated. Her figure blurred, then disappeared entirely, leaving me alone with the night. The air smelled faintly of burnt pumpkin pie, cinnamon that had turned bitter, and leftover gravy cooling in the kitchen. The scents wrapped around me like ghosts of Thanksgivings past, each one layered with memory. I closed my eyes, and suddenly it wasn't tonight anymore. It was every year, every silence, every time I'd stepped back so someone else could step forward. I could almost see it. Me, 17 years old, standing in the hallway of a worn-out classroom in my hometown. Flashback. I remember the envelope in my hands, thick and stiff, the seal stamped with the crest of the Design Institute in New York City. My heart had pounded so loudly I thought everyone in that building could hear it. It wasn't just a scholarship, it was my ladder out, my chance to climb into the life I'd been sketching in margins and dreaming of under lamplight. Mom stood beside me, her lips pressed into a line so thin it looked painful. "I'm sorry, Tammy," she said. It was always Tammy when she wanted to soften the blow, when she was afraid the truth would crack me. "We can't afford both of you. Bryn needs something stable. She just needs a chance." Her words were tender, but they pressed down like a weight. I looked at my sketchbooks stacked in the corner of my room, the ones filled with charcoal smudges, midnight drawings, ideas I thought might matter one day. I thought of the unpaid internships I had read about, the way my hands bled from pressing too hard on the cheap paper we could afford. And then I nodded. My voice came out as a whisper, so small it almost didn't exist. "Give it to her." No one thanked me. Not then, not ever. Nobody remembered the door I closed so my sister could walk through it. Present. Back on the porch, I inhaled until the night air burned my lungs, and then let it out slow, letting the quiet hold me like arms too heavy to break free from. When I finally stepped inside, I didn't look at anyone. I walked straight to the sideboard where my purse sat. My hand slipped inside, fingers brushing the cool leather until I felt the weight I'd carried for years. A small black folder. It looked ordinary, too ordinary for what it contained. But it was heavier than it had any right to be. I carried it to the dining table and set it down, not with drama, not with a speech, but with the simple finality of proof. The room stilled. Forks froze midway, coats rustled but never left the chairs. Someone's wine glass chimed against a plate, then stopped. Inside the folder, Documents bound by a clasp, glossy papers with signatures, ledger entries, LLC registrations, property deeds. It was my life's work distilled onto paper, my years, my sweat, my midnight hours, nobody saw. Bryn's face was the first to crack. Her lips parted, confusion colliding with anger, twisting her expression into something raw. Marlis leaned forward, her brows knitting, searching for an explanation that wouldn't come. Mom's voice trembled when it broke the silence. "You've been building all this behind our backs?" I met her eyes only briefly before turning to Bryn. "I built it away from expectations," I said. My voice was steady, though my hands tingled with the pulse of adrenaline. Bryn snapped a page in half, the sound sharp, jagged. Her voice rose with it. "So this was the plan all along? To let us suffer like extras in your story?" Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, but they were angry tears, weaponized and heavy. She jerked back in her chair, shaking her head. "You used us. You used me." The steel inside me finally surfaced. My voice was soft, but it cut. "I didn't ask for sympathy. I earned what I built. If that makes you angry, that's your burden, not mine." Dad leaned forward, hands clasped so tight the knuckles went white. His voice carried disappointment, not rage. "We thought we raised a daughter who honored family." I looked straight at him, unblinking. "You did. I honored every promise I made, but honoring family doesn't mean lying about who I am or letting someone else erase me." The table rippled with unease. Cousins shifted in their seats. An uncle cleared his throat. Someone stared too long at their plate. I caught glimpses of envy, confusion, betrayal. For years I had been the quiet one, the shadow in the corner, and now they saw the cost of my silence. Aunt Mel reached across to touch Marlis's arm. The gesture was small but filled the silence. Bryn crumbled against the chair, her face buried in her hands. "Bryn," I said. My voice wasn't sharp. It didn't need to be. "If you want me in your life, fine. But don't pretend you didn't see this coming." The living room felt colder, as though the chandelier's glow had dimmed. Light flickered across the wine stain in the carpet, a stain nobody had bothered to clean. Bryn lifted her head, her voice cracked. "So, all of this, you were watching me struggle?" I stood, sliding the folder back under my arm. "No, I was watching you float on my name." For a long beat, the only sound was my own breathing, in and out. The silence that followed wasn't the hush of peace. It was heavier. It was deeper. It was silence thick enough to drown in. When I unlocked the door to my condo in Austin that night, the handle felt heavier than usual, as though the steel carried its own warning. The moment the door gave way, the night breeze slipped past me, sharp and deliberate against my skin, like a messenger I hadn't invited but couldn't ignore. Inside, the rooms lay dark and untouched. No car in the driveway, no lights glowing in the windows to welcome me back, only the hum of the city outside, distant but insistent, as though reminding me that life was still moving, even if I wasn't ready to. I leaned my forehead against the wood for a second before stepping fully inside. The silence of my own home pressed against me, thick and undeniable, in contrast to the storm of voices I'd walked away from just hours before. That night after dinner, I hadn't spoken another word to Bryn. No sharp retorts, no final speeches. I had simply stood, slipped on my coat, and walked out. I didn't offer goodbyes, because goodbyes imply connection. Goodbyes suggest care, and those words weren't mine to give anymore. I dropped my bag by the couch and peeled off my coat, the lining brushing rough against my wrist. The sofa felt too firm as I sank onto its edge, posture stiff, as though my body hadn't yet caught up to my decision to leave. On the wall, the digital clock cast a dim green glow, 10:17 p.m. My phone buzzed where I'd left it on the side table. The screen lit with notifications, missed calls, unread texts stacked one after another like dominoes ready to topple. "We need to talk. Call me back. Please. My mother. My sister." Their words blurred together until I couldn't tell who was pleading and who was demanding. None of them understood what silence cost. Not really. Silence had been my sacrifice for years, the only currency I ever had when the family ledger ran short. I stared at the laptop waiting on the coffee table. Its glow felt colder than the city lights outside. My email draft still sat open. Subject line simple, message shorter. Subject: moving forward. Body: I am not available for financial assistance. Please do not ask. The words looked surgical, stripped of emotion. But hitting send felt like severing a rope I'd been gripping with bloodied hands. Too long, too hard. The snap wasn't loud, but I felt its echo in my chest. Afterward, I stood and walked to the window. Downtown Austin spread before me, a web of roads and neon signs. Apartment towers glittered with living room light, evidence of other people's dinners, other people's lives continuing without fracture. Somewhere in that grid, Bryn was replaying dinner, respinning the narrative to make herself the victim. Somewhere else, my mother lay awake, wondering where she had lost her hold on me. But then came the discovery, subtle at first, like a thread loose in a sweater. I'd been archiving financial records earlier that week, scanning through folders from years past. Now, with the silence thick around me, I pulled them back open, double-checking for reasons I couldn't explain. That's when I saw it. A letter dated 2018. A loan agreement. A neat signature scrawled at the bottom. My name. My heart slowed. I didn't remember signing that. I didn't even remember being in the city where it claimed to be notarized. I clicked through other folders, cross-checking tax files, old emails, credit line statements. My mind replayed the number over and over, $38,000. The paperwork called it a loan, but every piece of my instinct screamed something darker. A setup. A trap with my name attached to it. The next morning, I walked into my bank, calm on the outside but shaking in every hidden place. The lobby smelled like polished wood and stale coffee. The officer guided me into a booth with tinted windows, the kind meant to protect conversations from curious ears. I need every copy you have of documents with my signature, I said, forcing steadiness into my tone. The officer's expression shifted from neutral courtesy to quiet concern. Fingers clicked across the keyboard, whispers of printers starting up in the back room. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. When the papers finally slid across the desk, my stomach dropped. Witness statements, date stamps, notary marks. But the signature, my signature, wasn't mine. The slant was wrong, the pressure inconsistent. It was a forgery. Someone had used my full name, my date of birth, even my job details. All to secure a loan I had never touched, one that had already defaulted. And in the hollow silence of that booth, Bryn's voice echoed, not in the air, but in my head. You're sitting on millions, so help me. It was no longer betrayal. It wasn't just entitlement. It was theft. My pulse thudded in my ears, but I held myself together. I thought of the Texas Civil Practice Remedies Code, the sections I'd skimmed years ago when helping a friend in trouble. Fraudulent court records, fraudulent liens. The idea that someone could file a false document, pass it off as binding, intending to defraud another person. If I had proof, and I did, those statutes gave me leverage, a way forward, a way to fight back. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the gravity settle. Years of pouring every earned dollar back into my business, every saved cent into security and stability, and now I was facing the possibility that someone in my own family had tethered me to phantom debt. Back at the condo, I sat at my desk and opened a new legal folder. I created subfolders one by one: evidence, forgery, bank statements, witness statements. My hands trembled as I renamed the central document, Bryn's signature, 2018 forgery. The act felt ceremonial, like engraving a tombstone. She didn't just expect help, I whispered into the silence of my condo. My voice cracked, but I steadied it. She stole it. My phone lit up again, vibrating across the desk. Dad. His name, Craig Hensley, glowed on the screen. I watched it ring out, the soundless seconds stretching longer than they should. I didn't answer, not because I didn't love him, but because I knew what would follow: pleading, bargaining, excuses stacked on top of guilt. And I couldn't afford any of it now. Because in that moment, being a sister no longer felt like kinship. It felt like standing in the plaintiff's chair in a courtroom I never asked to enter. And when I woke the next morning, I didn't rise as a daughter. I didn't rise as a sister. I rose as a plaintiff preparing for war. The next morning, the sunlight didn't just filter through the blinds. It struck my window like a slap, harsh and unrelenting, as if it were an alarm I couldn't ignore. My eyes fluttered open, heavy, reluctant. An ache spread through my chest before my feet even touched the ground. Today wasn't ordinary. It wasn't routine. Today, I wasn't just a daughter or a sister. Today, I was preparing to defend everything I had built with my own hands. For a long moment, I sat still on the edge of the bed, clutching my phone like it might anchor me. The screen blinked awake, and there it was, a message from Elliot. Elliot. I uncovered something else. You should see this. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard, swung my legs out of bed, and planted them against the cold wood floor. The chill traveled up my calves, a reminder to stay alert. I dressed quickly, dark jeans, a crisp blouse, a jacket I didn't bother ironing, and tied my hair back in a knot that wasn't neat but would have to do. The drive downtown was a blur of traffic lights and honking horns, the skyline of Austin rising before me like a stage I hadn't agreed to walk onto. The coffee shop sat on the corner of Congress Avenue, always buzzing mid-morning with young professionals, freelancers with laptops, and baristas who moved like dancers behind the counter. When I stepped inside, the scent of roasted beans and steamed milk wrapped around me. Elliot was already there, waiting in a leather booth near the back. The din of espresso machines and the low hum of chatter seemed to circle him without touching him. He didn't smile when I slid into the seat across from him. His expression was tight, serious. Without preamble, he slid a tablet across the table. The screen glowed between us. "Look," he said, his voice measured but urgent. I leaned in. At first, all I saw were lines of text, legalese wrapped in paragraphs. Then my stomach dropped. My name printed cleanly at the top. My signature scrawled neatly at the bottom. Dated, years earlier, well before the loan letter we'd already discovered. This, Elliot said, tapping the screen with one finger, was meant to buy property in Round Rock. Your sister used your credentials, your entire profile, to qualify. The room tilted for a moment. My pulse skipped, then raced. This wasn't just about $38,000. This wasn't just about a loan. This was about my entire identity, misused, reshaped, bent to serve someone else's ambitions. I clenched my jaw, forcing my voice steady. How long has this been happening? Elliot didn't hesitate. Since 2017, I traced payroll records, paychecks misdirected, credit checks in your name. There were notes in systems only accessible by management. Someone up top pulled strings to make sure you wouldn't see it until now. The tablet sat heavy between us, evidence glowing like fire. I stared at the contract, reading line after line, the legal speak. The addresses, the financial projections, my signature staring back at me like a betrayal etched in ink. I thought of the nights I spent building spreadsheets, balancing budgets, double-checking every cent because security was the only luxury I could afford. And yet, all the while, someone was carving holes in the very foundation I stood on. They almost ruined me. We sat there for a long beat, the sounds of the cafe muffled as though we were under glass. My coffee went cold, untouched. Elliot finally leaned back, closing the tablet. His eyes searched mine. He didn't need to say more. We both knew what had to happen. The drive back across town was different from the morning's haze. This time I rehearsed my next steps, every turn of the wheel syncing with the path forming in my head. There was no going back. By noon, I had called my attorney. Not just any attorney, someone I trusted, someone with a reputation for integrity. When his assistant answered, my voice was crisp, no hesitation. "I need a meeting today." I gathered everything before leaving again. The loan notice, investment statements, the Round Rock contract. I organized it into folders labeled evidence, timeline, proof. My hands shook only once when I slid the forged contract into place. Then I locked the folder shut. By the afternoon, I was sitting in a law office, the blinds drawn halfway against the glaring Texas sun. Across the mahogany table, I signed papers one by one. Civil fraud claim. Financial restraining order. Motion to freeze assets under Bryn's name. Each document carried the weight of justice long delayed. Each signature reclaimed a piece of me she had tried to erase. The pen scratched across the page like a sword through fabric. My chest loosened slightly with every mark. By late afternoon, sunlight angled across my condo walls, painting long golden stripes, while legal paperwork piled high on my desk. It no longer looked like clutter, it looked like armor. When dusk settled, I sat at my desk and wrote the letter. Not in anger, not in desperation, but in clarity. Each word was factual, deliberate. Bryn, you committed fraud. I have evidence. You have 7 days to make this right, or face it in court. I read it aloud once. My voice didn't shake. My breath came steady. Then I clicked send. The silence afterward was deafening. Hours passed. No reply. No apology. No explanation. But then my phone buzzed again. Not with a text from her, but with a notification from social media. I opened it without thinking, and there she was. A new post on her page. Some people can't handle a little success. The words were shallow, desperate, yet they landed sharp. She was already trying to spin the story, already painting me as the villain to her audience of sympathizers. For a second, my eyes burned, watering despite my best efforts. But then the tears dried as quickly as they came, and anger steadied my spine. Then let's see how you handle a court summons, I whispered to the empty room. I locked my laptop, picked up my phone, sent a single text to Elliot. Everything is submitted. And then I sat back in the silence, aware of the weight pressing down, but also aware of something else rising in me. Resolve. There was no turning back now. When morning light crawled reluctantly across the edge of my windowsill, it didn't feel gentle or renewing. It felt heavy, insistent, like an unwelcome reminder that the day had already begun without me. My chest carried a weight thicker than sleep. The hum of my phone broke the stillness. Not the sharp trill of a call, but the subtle vibration of alerts stacking one after another. I reached for it with reluctant hands, eyes still adjusting to the brightness seeping through the blinds. Among the notifications, one subject line burned brighter than the rest. Subpoena issued to Bryn Allaire et al. I sat upright, air catching in my lungs. Yesterday, I had filed the lawsuit. Today, the system had answered. My case was no longer just paper in a folder. It had grown legs, found voice, carried authority. I showered quickly, dressed without thought. Jeans that felt soft from years of wear. A blouse buttoned too fast, slightly askew, but steady enough. I slipped on shoes, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door. The city was still stretching itself awake. Traffic moved in thin streams. Storefronts lit one by one. A jogger passed me on the sidewalk as I headed to my car. My drive to downtown Austin was marked not by music or talk radio, but by silence, the kind you don't fight, the kind that settles in when your thoughts are louder than anything a speaker could play. By the time I reached the courthouse steps, the morning air had sharpened. A small group of onlookers hovered near the doors, curiosity humming among them. And there she was, Bryn. Outside her boutique office, a process server approached her with steady authority, a thick envelope balanced in his hand like a gavel mid-swing. I stopped just far enough away to see, but not to interfere. Bryn's face flushed immediately. She took the papers with a jerky motion, eyes darting from the server to the reflective glass door beside her. For a brief second, she looked not at the words on the page, but at her own reflection, lipstick smudged, expression distorted by embarrassment and fury. Whispers circled the small crowd. Some raised their phones, maybe to record. I stood still. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel triumph. What spread through me was something closer to relief, like the moment after a long-held breath finally releases. Elsewhere, the process kept moving. That same day, my mother and father each received certified letters, subpoenas requiring testimony, financial records, explanations long delayed. My phone buzzed with the fallout. Group chats exploding, screenshots pinging from one cousin to another, voice messages filled with outrage and confusion. Are you losing your mind? This is insane. Don't stoop to her level. My screen felt hot in my hand as the notifications kept pouring in. By mid-evening, Bryn struck back in the only arena she knew how, her curated online world. A video appeared, already climbing in views. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her voice breaking just enough to sound practiced yet fragile. How could she do this? Betrayed by blood. Within minutes, comments surged, some defending her, others questioning me. All of them strangers weaving themselves into a story they didn't understand. My cousins added their voices, quieter but no less cutting. One text read, "Everyone loves you, Tamsin, but family is confusing." Another, "You're the one who left." And then, late that night, my phone lit with my mother's name. I let the call go to speaker, sitting at my kitchen counter with a glass of untouched water in front of me. Her voice trembled, fragile but sharp enough to wound. "You've turned on your family. You'll be alone forever." The words echoed off my kitchen tiles, hollow but piercing. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. After the call ended, the silence pressed closer. I opened a drawer, found my old phone, and scrolled through an app I hadn't touched in years. A voice memo folder blinked back at me, filled with fragments of forgotten moments. One caught my eye, dated in the late autumn of 2018. I pressed play. Crackling audio filled the room. My mother's voice, hushed but cutting, whispered to my father in the hallway, "If she doesn't help her sister, she's no daughter of mine." The words bled through the speaker, rough, final. "No daughter of mine." My breath caught, sharp and unsteady. My hand clenched the phone so tightly it pulsed against my palm. I hadn't saved it for leverage. I hadn't even remembered it was there. But now, resurfaced at this exact moment, it became undeniable proof. Evidence no lawyer, no judge, no jury could ignore. I stood barefoot in my kitchen, feeling the hardwood floor press cool against my soles. Memories tumbled one after another. Every dinner where I smiled to keep peace, every holiday where I bit my tongue, every night I stayed quiet so someone else could claim the spotlight. I felt the weight of years pressing down, and then, in one steady exhale, I let them go. "Never again," I whispered into the emptiness. With renewed steadiness, I sat at my desk and pulled my laptop closer. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I drafted a new message to Elliot. "Begin discovery. Pull everything." I hovered over the send button for a long moment. Outside, the city quieted, traffic thinning into occasional murmurs. Inside, my screen glowed with the choice in front of me. Finally, I pressed send. Then I opened a folder on my computer I'd labeled months ago, half as a joke, half as preparation. Backup plan. Inside it lay copies of everything: contracts, bank statements, voicemails, photographs. Years of careful documentation, not meant for display, but for survival. They thought this was just about money. They thought this was about envy, resentment, maybe even revenge. But they didn't know me at all. This wasn't just about dollars or debts. This was about truth, about identity, about drawing a line so sharp it couldn't be crossed again. And as I sat there in the quiet, surrounded by screens and files and evidence, I knew one thing with perfect clarity. The case had only just begun. By the time the legal filings settled into evidence, something shifted, something beyond resentment. I realized control wasn't taken by screaming. It was claimed with truth, with exposure. I opened my laptop in the early morning light, coffee in hand, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I had drafted a blog post, not a rant, a ledger. Everything I had done for them, every dollar, every favor, every time I covered rent, tuition, surgery. I hit publish. The post went live with scanned receipts, the loan I gave Bryn in 2015, the semester Bryn skipped tuition while I sent her checks secretly, the $2,200 I wired for cousin Lisa's textbooks. the $15,000 I paid for mom's surgery when dad couldn't. All attached, all verifiable, and the final line, "This is what selfishness looks like?" My heart pounded, but I didn't regret it, because it was time everyone saw. Within hours, comments flooded in. Some praised me for courage, others mocked me. Drama queen, money hoarder. Local news outlets picked it up. Austin woman exposes family ties, sibling rivalry, or systemic betrayal. I watched as one influencer dropped a contract with Bryn. Another unfollowed. Mom called, her voice thin. "You're humiliating us. You win." Was that the goal? I didn't answer. I listened as she spoke, the small whimpers behind the words, but I stayed detached. Later that afternoon, I met with our estate attorney. Oak-paneled office, quiet, the kind of room that smells of polished wood and old leather. I pushed the documents across his desk. "I formalize renouncement," I said. I wanted nothing. That's what I told him. My portion of the inheritance declined. Every asset that tied me back to the legacy of expectations, I transferred to a non-profit supporting women escaping family abuse. The attorney raised his eyebrows. "Are you sure?" I nodded. My voice calm. "Yes, I'm not here to be remembered in their will. I'm here to stop the cycle." Back home, I felt an odd sorrow. Not regret, just clarity, the kind that stills the air. That evening, Dad asked to meet. Bryn showed up too. They confronted me in the living room. Bryn's voice cracked. "So all this was for show, huh? You expose us to the world." Dad's voice was heavier. "We turned you into the enemy. We deserve this." Mom walked out. The world she built, of family gloss and unspoken debts, crumbled. I stayed facing them. Not angry, just steady. Late that night, I deleted the family group chat on my phone. All their pleas, insults, lies, gone. I closed my eyes, thinking, that was the last chain. When I stepped off the stage after renouncing their inheritance, I thought perhaps I'd sealed the door forever. But tonight, the world pushed to burst it wide open again. The Women's Entrepreneurship Summit crowd pressed close. The lights in Austin's altar-like hall carried hope in each beam. They named me Building Without Permission. My voice felt steady, measured. I told stories of risk, of walking away from things that don't belong to you. I looked across the audience, faces bright, engaged. I believed in what I said. Mid-speech, as my words echoed, true freedom sometimes demands sacrifice. The auditorium doors swung open. Bryn stormed in. She wore anger and hurt like armor. Her lips quivered, her voice cut through applause. "You're a liar!" she screamed. "You abandoned us. You used us for your little power trip." The hush was instant. All eyes shifted. Security guards froze mid-clap. My heart convulsed, not from fear, but from recognition. I saw Bryn's tears. I felt her desperation. She pointed at me, at this woman standing upright, meant to be a beacon. I paused, letting sound slide past me. Then I stepped aside, letting Bryn have the stage for her accusations, her sobs. The microphone jerked in a guard's hand. People gasped, but I said nothing. She ranted about betrayal, sacrifice, her wallet, her dignity. She accused me of turning our lives into public spectacle. She accused Mom of favoring me, of using guilt as leverage. I listened. I noticed her words. "You've always. You got lucky. You think you're better." Then, when the auditorium's pulse had quickened, when she expected me to break, I took the mic back, softly, confidently. Every person in this room knows the difference between being used and being free. I chose freedom. My voice carried, not loud, but unwavering. The room exhaled. Bryn stood mid-storm, mouth open. The audience rose. Applause muffled her cries. I didn't smile. I didn't watch her escorted out. Security guided her out of rows of stunned faces. She was still screaming. I let the echo of her pain fade. Then I continued. My speech, my proof, my journey. How I built, how I stepped away, how I stopped expecting permission. At the podium's edge, I concluded with, sometimes Peace sounds like a door clicking shut behind you. My voice small, but the meaning enormous. Backstage, someone shook my hand. Elliot's eyes glistened. I nodded once. Then I walked toward the dressing room mirror. My reflection was not the girl who stayed silent, but someone who chose boundaries. My throat felt dry, but I exhaled. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped a message to Elliot. It's done. My hand shook slightly, then my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. I saw what happened. I'm sorry. Truly. I didn't respond. I closed my phone. I leaned against the wall, letting my back rest on cold plaster. The lights dimmed outside. The curtains closed. Forgiveness isn't a door, it's a window, and it doesn't open easily. Forgiveness isn't a door, it's a window, and it doesn't open easily. I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains, warm across my face. The residual ache from the summit still lingered, but the weight on my chest was lighter. I stood, stretched, and looked at my phone. No new messages from Bryn, no insults, just a quiet from the family group. Craig's apology rested there like dust. Later that Sunday, I was in the office, tweaking the foundation's paperwork, the nonprofit that helps women rebuild after family trauma. Papers spread across the desk, receipts, bylaws, tax forms. My door opened quietly. Craig stepped in, his tie loosened, shoes dusty as though he drove without caring much about appearances. He didn't say, "Marlis told me," or "Your sister." He simply said, "We raised you to obey. You chose to lead. That wasn't wrong." Silence. I looked up. His eyes, usually guarded, always steady, were red. The room smelled faintly of old coffee and burnt toast from breakfast. I gestured to the chair. He sat. He didn't defend Bryn. He didn't defend his wife. He admitted nothing. But he acknowledged something. The years of invisible expectations, of silence traded for peace. "Whatever you do next," he said, "don't disappear. You were never the problem." I nodded, heart stuttering with relief. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something tender, honest. That afternoon, I made my decision. I sat in the living room of my condominium, sunlight filtering through blinds, dust motes dancing in shafts of light. I drafted a check, not to the family, but to a wellness center in Bryn City, not under my name, anonymously, year of therapy. Because even as I draw lines, healing should be possible. Because pain deserves acknowledgement, even without apologies. I paused before sealing the envelope. I remembered nights I stayed silent so no one would be embarrassed. I remembered whispers. "That's just Tamsin, always so proud." I remembered being told that if I refused to give, I should expect nothing back. Still, I pressed the stamp down. Later that evening, I wandered across my condo, the soft hum of the air conditioner and the quiet of things finally still. I sat at my desk, pen in hand, journal open. I wrote, "Closure doesn't need witnesses, only peace." Outside, streetlights glowed golden, and I opened my phone. No family texts, no Bryn rants. Instead, an email from a women's mentor group. "Would you share your story with our cohort?" A small ripple of connection. I tapped response. Something simple, something true. Some debts aren't owed, some families are chosen, and some peace you earn alone. I hit send and leaned back. And for a moment, the first time in years, I let myself believe I might be okay. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who believe they're entitled to our silence, our success, even our soul. But setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Tamsin's story reminds us that walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. Have you ever had to choose peace over family? What did it cost you, and was it worth it? If this story struck a chord, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real-life stories that speak the truth no one dares to say. Your journey to healing might just begin with the next video.